What if the moment that breaks you isn't loud? Not a slammed door, not a screaming match, just the small sound of your son's confused laughter as he stares at a $5 gift card. That's how mine began. Christmas Eve, twinkling lights, and my family gathered around the tree like any other year. Caleb was 7, still believing that every box wrapped in shiny paper held magic. He tore into his gift from my mother, expecting, well, something. When he saw that card, he turned it over twice, laughed awkwardly, and whispered, "Is this for coffee, Dad?" I watched him try to be polite. My chest hurt. Then I looked over. My sister Mia's daughter, Lily, was squealing over her surprise, a trip to Disneyland. Flights booked, hotel paid, spending money included. My mom hugged her and said, "You deserve the world, sweetheart." I don't know what snapped in me first, the unfairness or the quiet acceptance I'd always worn like armor. I smiled, thanked everyone for dinner, and said I needed to get Caleb to bed early. At home, Naomi saw my face and didn't ask. She just started folding clothes into a bag. No dramatic music, no screaming. Just the rustle of fabric and the click of zippers. Caleb was confused. "Are we going somewhere, Dad?" I told him we were going home, really home this time. He nodded like he understood more than a 7-year-old should. We left that night. I drove through silent streets while snow gathered on the windshield, each flake glowing in the streetlights. Naomi held my hand, no words between us, just the shared ache of knowing this wasn't sudden. It had been building for years. The times my parents forgot Caleb's birthday, the way my accomplishments were met with polite nods while Mia's smallest gestures earned applause. The emotional math never added up, but I kept paying the debt anyway. When my parents called the next morning, I didn't answer. When they showed up at my office 2 days later, I told my receptionist I wasn't available. A week passed before my phone finally buzzed with a message from my mother. "We didn't mean to hurt you. Families shouldn't walk away over something so small." Small. That word sat in my chest like a stone. $5 wasn't small. It was 7 years of my son learning that his worth came in leftovers. It was a lifetime of being told to be grateful for crumbs while someone else feasted. I never yelled, never demanded apologies. I just didn't come back. And in the quiet that followed, something strange happened, peace. Caleb used that gift card months later to buy me a coffee on his birthday. "I wanted to give it to you," he said. I still keep that receipt in my wallet. It reminds me that sometimes, walking away isn't losing family. It's finally choosing your own. I used to think that keeping everyone happy was the same as being loved. My parents raised me to fix things, not to complain. When my dad forgot his wallet at dinner, I paid. When my mom said, "Mia's just struggling, be a good sister," I handed over money I didn't have. It became normal. My role was to make life smoother for everyone but myself. Mia was always the favorite. She had that easy charm that drew people in. When she failed classes, I stayed up late tutoring her. When she got her diploma, my parents threw her a party. Mine came and went with a small cake and a good job from my dad before he left to help Mia move apartments. I told myself it didn't matter, but it did. Each small moment built a quiet wall between us, brick by brick. When I got my dental degree, I thought things would change. I imagined my parents would finally see me as someone to be proud of. But even then, the praise went to Mia for encouraging me. My success somehow turned into her reflection. She cried at my graduation, called herself emotional, and everyone comforted her. I just smiled, pretending it was fine. The money part started small. Mia's rent was late, her car broke down, her baby needed something, always something. I helped every time because that's what a good daughter does. Meanwhile, I drove a car with a cracked windshield and skipped weekends off because someone had to be responsible. My parents said, "You're the strong one," as if strength was a gift instead of a burden. Even Naomi noticed before I did. She once said, "You keep giving pieces of yourself to people who never give any back." I brushed it off. I told her they just needed me more. Deep down, though, I knew she was right. I wasn't helping. I was being used. The worst part wasn't the money or the attention. It was how natural it all felt. My mother would call me after another of Mia's mistakes, sigh, and say, "You understand her." That meant, "Clean it up." My father would nod proudly when I fixed things, like a mechanic proud of his reliable tool. I wasn't a daughter anymore. I was their solution. Once, my car broke down on the highway. I called my dad, hoping maybe he'd come help. He said, "Ask Naomi. You're the one with the good job." I waited 3 hours for a tow truck, sitting there in the dark, realizing that if roles were reversed, I'd have driven across town for him without a thought. I learned to expect nothing. I smiled through birthdays where my gifts were forgotten. I took photos of family dinners where my chair felt invisible. I told myself it was love, just shaped differently. But love isn't supposed to drain you. By the time that Christmas came, the pattern was already carved deep. The $5 card wasn't new, it was proof. Proof that no matter how much I gave, they would always see me as the one who could handle less. And maybe that's what finally broke the spell. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done being the one who patched every hole. That night, when I left my parents' house, I wasn't walking away from family. I was walking away from the role they wrote for me, the quiet fixer, the dependable scapegoat. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. The house felt strangely still that night. No flashing lights, no sound of wrapping paper, no fake laughter echoing from anyone trying too hard to look happy. Just the soft hum of the heater and Caleb's quiet voice asking, "Was I not grateful enough, Dad?" His small hands fidgeted with the blanket as he looked at me, unsure if he had done something wrong. I sat beside him, brushing his hair away from his forehead. "You did everything right, buddy," I said. He didn't look convinced, but Naomi leaned in and kissed his cheek. "Some people don't always know how to give fairly," she added softly. Caleb nodded, though his eyes still carried that confused sadness only kids have when the world stops making sense. After he fell asleep, Naomi and I stood in the doorway for a long time. Neither of us spoke. The air felt thick, heavy with everything we weren't saying. It wasn't just about a $5 gift card. It was about all the years leading up to that moment. The imbalance, the pretending, the quiet disrespect that had become normal. We sat on the couch, the Christmas tree glowing faintly in the corner. Naomi reached for my hand. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. Her tone wasn't doubtful, just weary. "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I'm done trying to fix it." She nodded, and that was it. No speeches, no drama. Just two tired people choosing peace over chaos. I picked up my phone and opened the family group chat. Dozens of messages buzzed from earlier that night, pictures, jokes, updates. I stared at it for a second, then pressed leave group. A tiny pop-up asked if I was sure. I was. We unplugged the house phone next. Not out of anger, but out of need. For once, I didn't want explanations or apologies or guilt-filled calls about keeping the family together. I wanted silence. The first few days felt strange. My phone stayed quiet, the absence of noise louder than anything. Naomi went about her routine, humming under her breath as she made breakfast. Caleb, still confused, kept asking when we were going to Grandma's again. "Not for a while," I told him. "We're spending more time here." Little by little, the quiet started feeling comfortable. Meals tasted better when no one was walking on eggshells. The house seemed brighter. Naomi laughed more often, really laughed, the kind that fills the room. Caleb started sleeping through the night again. One evening, we took him out to see the neighborhood lights. He ran ahead of us, pointing at every glowing reindeer and candy cane, his excitement so pure it made something unclench inside me. I realized then how much noise my family had added to our lives. The guilt, the comparisons, the constant tension. Without it, the air felt lighter. The calls kept coming at first, but we didn't answer. Then they stopped. Texts slowed down. The silence stretched on until it stopped feeling empty and started feeling like healing. We weren't plotting revenge. We weren't waiting for apologies. We were just still. And in that stillness, I finally understood what peace really meant. It wasn't about forgetting what happened or pretending it didn't hurt. It was about no longer letting it control us. That night, Naomi leaned her head on my shoulder as we watched Caleb sleep, his small chest rising and falling in rhythm with the quiet room. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like something was missing. The world wasn't louder or brighter or bigger. It was simply calm. And that was enough. The next morning, the snow on the driveway was still fresh when I pulled up to my parents' house. I hadn't planned to come back so soon, but Caleb's photo albums, baby blanket, and old toys were still there. My mother had always said she'd keep them safe, though I now realized that meant she liked holding on to things that didn't belong to her. When I rang the bell, she opened the door with that same practiced smile she used when pretending everything was fine. "Ashton, you came back," she said, relief mixed with hope. I nodded slightly. "I just need to collect Caleb's things," I said. My voice was calm, even not the trembling tone they were used to when I tried explaining myself in the past. She stepped aside, a little thrown off by my quietness. The house smelled of cinnamon and perfume, the same way it always did during the holidays, but it felt smaller now, almost airless. My father sat in his chair by the window, reading a newspaper he probably wasn't really reading. When I walked in, he didn't look up right away. "You're here early," he finally said. "I won't be long," I replied. I went straight to the hallway closet where the boxes were stacked. My mother followed me, talking quickly. "You don't have to take everything now. Let's just talk first. We were all emotional last night." "There's nothing to talk about," I said quietly. I opened each box, checking what was inside. Caleb's first shoes, his hospital bracelet, the small wooden car he'd made with my dad when he was 4. Seeing those things reminded me why I was here, to protect what mattered. My father finally stood up, setting his paper down with a sharp fold. "You're being unreasonable," he said. "Family has disagreements. You don't throw everything away over something small." I turned to face him. "You've called everything small for years. Maybe that's the problem." His eyes hardened. "If you walk out that door and keep this attitude, don't expect us to help you with anything. Not for Caleb. Not ever again." For a second, the room went silent except for the ticking clock on the wall. Then I said, "You never did." My voice didn't shake. I didn't need to shout. The truth was louder than anything else. My mother's face changed. She wasn't angry, just startled, as if hearing honesty from me for the first time. She reached out, but I stepped back. "I'm not here to fight," I told her. "I just came for what's ours." I carried the boxes to the door. My father muttered something under his breath, but I didn't ask what it was. I didn't care anymore. When I turned the knob, the sunlight hit the floor, spilling across the hallway like a clean break between what was behind me and what was ahead. Outside, the air was cold but sharp in a good way. Naomi was waiting in the car, engine running. She looked at me through the window, and I nodded. She didn't need to ask how it went. As I placed the last box in the back seat, I glanced once more at the house. The curtains moved, maybe from my mother watching. I didn't wave. I just got in, shut the door, and drove away. This time, there was no guilt. Only quiet. The day after I brought Caleb's things home, I sat at my desk with a blank email open. I had rehearsed what I wanted to say all morning. I wasn't angry anymore, just clear. My parents had always used confusion to pull me back in. Emotional words, guilt, sudden kindness. But I wasn't going to give them that chance again. I started simply. "Mom, Dad, from now on, please don't send money requests, ask for favors, or involve me in Mia's problems. Any gifts for Caleb must be approved by me and Naomi. We won't be attending holidays unless we plan them ourselves. I wish you well, but we need distance for peace." I read it twice, checking that every word was calm, not bitter. Then I pressed send. The reply came faster than I expected. My mother wrote, "I can't believe you'd write something so cold. Family doesn't set rules like business deals." I didn't respond. An hour later, another message appeared, this time from my father. "You're breaking your mother's heart. Do you even think about your sister and Lily? What are you teaching Caleb?" I closed my laptop and left it on the table. Naomi saw my face and said softly, "You did the right thing." That night, my phone filled with missed calls. Then came the texts. You're tearing the family apart. We've always done our best for you. Why punish us for loving you? It was the same pattern as always, turning my boundary into an offense. But this time, I didn't reply. The next morning, I saw messages in the family group chat from Mia. Mom's crying. Are you happy now? Then another. Lily misses her cousin. You're confusing her with this drama. I muted the chat and went to work. Throughout the week, they tried different tones. My father called the office pretending to need dental advice. My mother sent pictures of Caleb as a baby, writing, "Don't you want him to know where he came from?" Then, when I didn't respond, she switched to anger. If this is the kind of person Naomi's turned you into, I pity your son. I didn't delete the messages. I read each one carefully and let them pass. The more they tried to push, the more peaceful my silence felt. Naomi told me, "They're not used to you saying no. That's why they sound scared." She was right. For years, they relied on me to smooth everything over. Now that I'd stopped, they didn't know what to do. By the end of the week, the noise slowed down. The last email from my father was short. "You'll regret this one day." I replied with 2 words, "I won't." The next few evenings felt quiet in the best way. Caleb played in the living room while Naomi read by the window. I made dinner without checking my phone. No sudden calls, no tension waiting behind every notification. It felt strange but clean, like finally breathing air that wasn't borrowed. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for approval or forgiveness. I wasn't trying to explain my side. My message had been clear, and I had nothing else to add. The peace I wanted didn't come from their understanding. It came from finally drawing a line and not stepping back over it. The sun was out that Saturday, bright enough to make the snow sparkle on the sidewalks. Caleb held the small gift card in his mittened hand, the corners already bent from how often he'd looked at it. He'd kept it on his dresser for weeks, not sure what to do with it. That morning, while eating cereal, he suddenly said, "Dad, can we go use it today?" I nodded. "Sure, buddy. Let's make it fun." We drove to the small store near the park, the kind with colorful shelves and friendly staff who always smiled at kids. Naomi came along, her camera tucked in her coat pocket. The bell above the door jingled when we walked in, and the warm air smelled like sugar and chocolate. Caleb looked around, his eyes wide. "Can I really pick anything?" he asked. I said, "Anything you want for $5. It wasn't much, but for him, it felt like an adventure. He wandered between aisles, studying every row of sweets as if he were making a life decision. Naomi and I followed behind quietly, watching him take his time. He picked things up, compared prices, and did the math out loud, his small voice focused and serious. "If I get this chocolate bar, then I can't get the candy cane. But the candy cane is huge." He looked at me, waiting for advice. "Go with what makes you happiest," I said. He grinned and grabbed the biggest red and white candy cane he could find, taller than his forearm. At the counter, he proudly slid the card across to the cashier. She smiled. "Good choice," she said. He watched as she swiped it, his face lighting up when she handed him the receipt. He folded it carefully and slipped it into his pocket like it was something precious. Outside, he unwrapped the candy cane and took a bite. His cheeks were pink from the cold, his eyes bright. "This tastes better than anything Grandma ever gave me," he said between bites. Naomi laughed softly. I smiled but didn't answer. I knew what he meant. We sat on a bench nearby, watching people walk their dogs and kids throw snowballs. Caleb swung his legs and kept talking about how $5 could buy something so good. Naomi leaned close to me and said, "You realize this is the happiest he's been all season?" I nodded. It wasn't about the candy. It was about how simple everything felt. No tension, no pretending to be grateful for unfairness. Just a small boy enjoying his treat. When we got home, Caleb taped the receipt to the fridge. "It's proof," he said proudly. I asked, "Proof of what?" He thought for a moment and said, "That I spent it my way." Naomi smiled at that. I did too. That little piece of paper stayed there, fluttering every time the fridge opened. It wasn't worth much to anyone else, but to us, it was a reminder. Something meant to be small had turned into something freeing. That $5 card had been given to make us feel lesser. But watching Caleb's joy, I realized it had done the opposite. It showed us we didn't need big gestures or expensive gifts to feel lucky. We just needed honesty, space, and a day that was completely our own. It was a quiet afternoon at the clinic. The waiting room smelled faintly of mint, the low hum of the dental equipment steady in the background. I was finishing up with a patient when the receptionist's voice came through the intercom. "Dr. Hale, there's someone here asking to see you. He doesn't have an appointment." Before I could answer, the door opened, and there he was, my father. He stepped in with the same confidence he used to have walking into our old house, the kind that assumed everything and everyone would move aside for him. "Ashton," he said, using that familiar tone of authority, "I need you to take a quick look at my tooth. Crown broke last week. You can fix it now, right?" I took off my gloves slowly. "Hi, Dad. Do you have an appointment?" He looked puzzled, almost offended. "Appointment? You don't need to be formal with me. I'm your father." I nodded, staying calm. "Even my father has to go through the front desk. You'll need to check in with them so they can see when I'm available." His face stiffened. "You're seriously going to make me wait like one of your patients?" "That's exactly what you are right now," I said, keeping my tone polite but firm. "A patient?" He frowned, glancing toward the hallway. "I thought family gets some exceptions." "Not here," I replied. "We follow the same rules for everyone." There was a long pause. He studied my face, probably looking for the daughter who used to bend over backward for him. When he didn't find her, his jaw tightened. "This is how you treat the man who raised you?" he asked quietly, but it wasn't a question. It was a challenge. I walked to the counter and handed him a clipboard. "You can fill this out and give your insurance card to the receptionist. She'll find the next open slot." He stared at the clipboard like it was an insult. "I don't need paperwork. I just need 5 minutes." "Then you'll need to schedule 5 minutes," I said. "That's how this works." The receptionist, uncomfortable but professional, stepped in. "Mr. Hale, I can check the next available time for you," she said carefully. My father turned to her. "I'm her father," he repeated, his voice rising slightly. "She can fit me in." I didn't move. "Please help him, Jenna," I said to the receptionist. "Just like you would any other walk-in." That line seemed to hit harder than anything else. His shoulders dropped slightly. "You've really changed," he said finally, shaking his head. "Maybe," I answered, "but this is how things are now." He didn't fill out the form. He stood there for another few seconds, as if deciding whether to argue more, then muttered something I couldn't hear and walked out. The bell on the door chimed softly behind him. Jenna looked at me, unsure. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded, even though my hands felt heavier than they should. "Yes, I'm fine." I went back to my next patient, keeping my focus steady. I didn't look at the door again. He had wanted control, but what he got instead was fairness. And for once, that was enough. It was late in the afternoon when my phone started ringing nonstop. I had just finished paperwork at the office, ready to lock up for the day. The caller ID flashed my mother's name, then Mia's, over and over again. I let it ring at first, but after the 5th call, I picked up. Mia's voice came through fast and shaky. "Ashton, it's Lily. She fell at the playground. Her front tooth is chipped. Mom says you can fix it, right? We're already outside your office." I took a slow breath, glancing at the clock. The clinic was closed. "You should take her to the emergency dentist downtown," I said evenly. "She needs you," Mia insisted. I could hear Lily crying in the background. My mother's voice came through too, sharp and commanding. "Ashton, please open the door. You're a dentist. You can't just ignore this." I walked to the window. Sure enough, their car was parked outside, hazard lights blinking. My mother was standing next to it, waving her arms as if she could summon me by sheer will. I could have walked out right then, like I used to, dropping everything to fix their problems. But that part of me didn't exist anymore. "I'm not at the clinic for emergencies," I said. "There's a pediatric dental office 5 minutes away." "This is ridiculous," my mother snapped. "You'd really let your own niece suffer when you could help." I'm not letting her suffer, I said quietly. She needs proper care, and I'll help once the situation is handled correctly. Mia started crying now, her voice breaking. I can't afford another dentist today. Please, Ash. Just this once. That phrase, just this once, was one I'd heard 1,000 times before. Every once had turned into a habit that drained me piece by piece. I stayed silent, letting her words hang there. Open the door, my mother said again, her tone turning cold. You're choosing pride over family. No, I said. I'm choosing boundaries. There was silence on the line. I could hear the faint sound of Lily's sniffles. I'll text you the address of a dentist who can take her immediately, I added. They're good with kids. She'll be fine. Then I ended the call. Through the blinds, I saw them talking beside the car. My mother was pacing, gesturing toward the building. Mia held Lily close, her face pale. After a minute, they got back in the car and drove off. I sat down at my desk, the quiet returning slowly. My hands trembled a little, not from guilt, but from how different it felt to stay firm. Naomi called a few minutes later. Everything okay? She asked. They came here, I said. Lily chipped her tooth. I told them where to go. I'm proud of you, she said. Later that evening, Mia texted again. We found the clinic. They fixed it. She's okay. Then another message followed. Mom's furious. She says you've changed too much. I didn't reply. I knew what that meant. They were realizing I wasn't theirs to control anymore. That night, I sat beside Caleb while he drew on the living room floor. He asked what I was thinking about. I smiled a little and said, sometimes people learn things the hard way. He didn't ask more, and I didn't explain. I didn't need to. The lesson had already been written in their own panic. An emergency they thought would bend me had only shown how strong I'd finally become. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a short message from Mia. Lily's tooth hurts again. The filling came loose. Can you please see her? We'll pay whatever you charge. It was the first time she had ever written those words. We'll pay. I read it twice, unsure if it was desperation or change. Either way, I replied, bring her at noon. The clinic will be open for 1 hour. At 12 sharp, their car pulled up. Mia looked tired, holding Lily's hand. My mother followed behind, expression tense. They entered quietly, without the usual sense of control they carried everywhere. Lily gave me a small smile. Hi, Auntie Ash, she said shyly. The tooth was chipped again, and she winced when she spoke. I smiled gently at her. We'll take care of it soon, sweetheart. Then I turned to Mia and my mother. Before I start, we need to go over a few things. Mia frowned, confused. Can we do this later? She's in pain. I shook my head. No, we'll do it now. I need both of you to understand my terms. My mother crossed her arms. This isn't the time for lectures. This is exactly the time, I said evenly. You're here because you need my help. I'll gladly give it, but only if we're clear. They stayed silent, so I continued. First, this visit is not free. You'll pay the standard rate, just like every other patient. Second, my boundaries still stand. No unexpected visits, no favors, no guilt calls. And third, from this moment forward, you respect the limits I've set, or this will be the last time I help. Mia glanced at my mother, waiting for her to argue, but she didn't. My mother's voice was low when she finally spoke. You'd really make us agree to that while your niece is hurting? Yes, I said simply. Because this isn't about punishment. It's about fairness. Mia bit her lip and nodded. Fine, she said quietly. We'll agree. Just please help her. Say it clearly, I said. You both agree to my terms. They exchanged a look before my mother muttered, we agree. I nodded once. Good. Let's begin. I turned my attention fully to Lily, switching into the professional focus I knew best. The rest of the world disappeared as I worked. Steady hands, calm voice, explaining each step so she wouldn't be scared. Within half an hour, her tooth was fixed again, smooth and even. When it was over, Lily smiled wide. It doesn't hurt anymore, she said, touching her mouth with wonder. I gave her a mirror. You're all set. At the front desk, Mia handed her card to the receptionist. My mother hesitated, her hand hovering over her purse, but she didn't say a word. The transaction went through quietly, the sound of the printer spitting out a receipt echoing in the stillness. As they left, Mia turned back. "Thank you," she said softly. I nodded. "You're welcome. Take care of her." When the door closed behind them, the silence felt steady, not heavy. It wasn't triumph I felt, just balance. For once, everything had been done on equal ground. They had needed me, and they'd finally treated me like the professional I was, not the family's safety net. It wasn't revenge. It was respect, long overdue. A full year passed before December came around again. Life had settled into a gentle rhythm: work, school, weekends at the park. There were no tense phone calls or guilt-filled messages, just the quiet kind of peace that had once felt impossible. Then one morning I saw a new email. It was from my mother. The subject line read, "I'm sorry." Her message was short. She wrote that she had been thinking about everything, that maybe she hadn't understood how much she'd hurt me. There were no excuses, no long explanations, just a simple, honest apology. A few days later, another message arrived, this time from my father. He didn't say the word sorry, but his tone was different. He asked about Caleb's school and said he'd like to see him sometime. If that's all right. It was the first time he had ever asked for permission instead of assuming. Even Mia reached out, sending a small text. "I know I made things harder for you. I'm trying to do better." It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. I didn't rush to respond. I read their messages, thought about them, and then replied simply, "Thank you for understanding. We're doing well." That was enough. There was no need to open old wounds or revisit the past. The truth had already done its work. As December went on, Naomi and I started preparing for Christmas. Caleb was older now, more thoughtful, but still full of excitement. One evening, he asked, "Can we get a big tree this year?" Naomi laughed and said, "As big as the ceiling can handle." We picked one out together, a tall, full pine that made the living room smell like winter. We decorated slowly, letting Caleb hang each ornament himself. The lights flickered softly against the windows, reflecting tiny patterns on the walls. Naomi turned on music, and for a moment, everything felt light. Caleb hung a handmade ornament shaped like a candy cane near the top. "Remember the $5 card?" he said, grinning. I smiled. "I remember." He laughed, not with sadness, but with a sense of ownership over the story. To him, it wasn't about what he didn't get. It was about how far we'd come. When the tree was finished, we stood back and looked at it together. The room was warm, quiet except for the faint sound of the lights humming. There was no drama, no bitterness, just peace. I thought about my parents then, not with anger, but with distance. Maybe they'd learned something. Maybe not. Either way, it no longer decided our happiness. Naomi took my hand. Caleb leaned against my leg. And in that calm, I understood something I'd missed for years. Winning didn't mean proving them wrong. It meant creating a life where we no longer needed their approval. That was our quiet victory. Do you think I made the right choice by walking away from my family, or should I have given them another chance? I'd really like to know what you think in the comments. And if you enjoyed my story and want to hear more like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss one.